Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this seminar on video games on mobiles for FICOD 2014. Thank you very much for coming. I know it's one of the last sessions, but it's also one of the most interesting, particularly because of the two people who are here with me today on my left, as you will have seen in the program. One of them is Manel Sort. Manel Sort is the head of the King.com studio. It's a very well-known company because they did Candy Crush Saga, and they are located in Barcelona. They also have Bubble Witch, and Manel has been working in video games for more than 12 years now. He has more than 70 qualifications. And he's also he's a lecturer in universities in Spain, in Mexico, OPC, Lisabon, and the Technological Institute of Monterrey are among many of the universities where he lectures. Ale Moreno is also the head of studies of a civilian team called Genera Mobile. Perhaps you haven't heard of that, but they did Frozen Freefall, which is better known, and it's licensed by the Disney company. He has also been working for more than 8 years doing video games for mobile devices, mainly with iOS, and this is quickly evolving. He's also done courses, mobile master's courses at the University of Seville, and he now leads many of the projects within that company. And here, probably, there will be some entrepreneurs in the room, I'm sure, and people who work with mobile games and who are keen to do new things or involved already in doing things. And so that they're here to explain how to launch games and to tell us a little bit about the figures behind that, and the more than 1 million downloads or 500,000 downloads, and I don't know, Candy Crush. And now to contextualize, we're going to spend more than 20 billion euros just in mobile games. This is the third more than last year. That's incredible growth, third more than last year, but nevertheless it's a market, it's a very volatile audience. And if we compare the top 10 the games that are most sold or downloaded year after year, 6 of the top 10 this year were not in the top 10 last year. So it's very difficult to get a foot in the door, and it's even more difficult to stay there. And Facebook is another business that they have, and it's also involved here with their integration of multi-platforms. Also turns over 6 billion with just this business. I'm Sánchez. I'm director of a website that does contents, and as a journalist I will try and get you to tell us the best information for us. We all know that video games are pioneers, and they really get the maximum use of PCs, and wherever the games go in, they manage to get technology to progress quickly. When video games came into Facebook, the people in Zynga and King and Guga all got in on it, until Saga put the brakes on it because the expansion of the games got a bit out of control. It looked as if Facebook became a platform for video games, and that was the movement, really. Zuckerberg put the brakes on there. Is that why they're looking for platforms to... Well, that was hard. I remember that affected us in sales. But it wasn't that the business wasn't sustainable. It was just a little bit more difficult because the two factors came together. The offerings on Facebook grew, and there was more competition at the same time as the acquisition costs went up, and people went to mobile. It's not what happened on Facebook, but you didn't have micropowers, you couldn't have a social application, all the in-app purchases and and buying within the application was not feasible. You had the deck free, and then you had the payment deck, and then you could download free applications. In free applications, you could not do micropowers. So the business model was not feasible in the mobile platform before that. So that was a bit late for you, wasn't it? You came in once the market had already taken off. Yes, well, we came in when their SKD came in, and when the smartphones began to really take off. And to 2008, we came in with the free applications, and then with social applications, and then we continued to looking for that market. But we didn't develop Facebook, and we're thinking now of developing some of these things. But that change that Mark Zuckerberg put in didn't really affect us. Facebook that completed life, but then I think that there was Parsi was acquired, I think, and it belongs to Facebook now. And what was the aim? They wanted to facilitate the multi-platform. And in King, we have our own technology. We never use third-party technologies, and the reason for that is that King has a very high volume of traffic, much more traffic than Wikipedia. Now, 137 million people in the world have played King games, and to scale up to that level, we had to have a very specific technology to allow us as servers to deal with so many people who are interacting at the same time. So it's King technology. You're not using any Facebook or any specific data. It wasn't feasible. Technically, we had to do some very specific things in order to scale up in this way. Does that affect you? Do you work on a multi-platform like this? Because as far as I know, because this is very technical perhaps, but what allows you to be on various platforms and to keep the data on the cloud side, which allows you to play the same game from very different devices without losing the progress, whether you're in Facebook, Android or iOS. iOS is synchronized and your friend is synchronized, and with the status you can see the screen, you can see, so your life is synchronized and everything. So we were looking for free alternative, more Parse, and now we're doing that. Would you recommend possible developers in the room to use one technology or another? Because to develop your own technology to do this, it must be very tedious, and it's data management really, when what you want to do is to do a game that entertains. But at the beginning, you to be quick, you need to use third parties. I don't know if it's good, but to be quick, but I would advise not to begin to develop your own technology, at least at the beginning when you're starting off. And to continue on this subject, is it important to have the data synchronized and to be multi-platform? To what extent is a game better or worse, or sells more or less if it is only one in one kind of device, or if it is in any device where the user can, whether it is a mobile or a PC at the office, which nobody ever does, of course, but or whether it's on a tablet, well, you have to bear in mind that if you offer the same synchronization to various devices at the same time, perhaps a desktop or a mobile device, that the user at any moment in time that they're playing at work, of course, nobody ever plays at work, but they will be able to access in those 5 minutes that they have. They will be able to advance on the map and progress in the game, or get the life that they've just won, and to continue to play. That multi-platform is very important. And since we have now as Unity, which is multi-platform, and that allows you in a very simple way to have the same development with just a little bit more work to have them on various platforms at the same time. Your application in iOS, which you developed initially, you could have it in a short time also on Android and on Amazon and on Facebook. And well, I've done my homework a little bit with this subject, and there's titles like Cookie Jam that are have a turnover of $100 million per day. Per day, that's their turnover. And the Facebook team said, well, and you use Parser, and then you will be, apart from just on mobiles, you'll be completely synchronized and connected, and you're going to earn 50% more, $150 million per day. And that's something to make you consider being on multi-platform. With regards to what you were saying, when you were beginning to develop iOS, do we still first have to develop for them, and then after 6 months to launch the Android, or in your case, perhaps as a social game first and then Facebook? Is that the process? Is that with a change in the paradigm of well, we in King, what I want is when a product is launched, it has to be a quality product, and the best way to ensure that is to integrate quickly with the consumer to get to go to the platform. On online web, it goes very well, and you can always publish it on and mobile is Android and not iOS, because iOS has much longer cycle for approval. So Android predominates for us. What we do is to test out a web and then go on to Android and then iOS, and it's related to the multi-platform matter. Particularly, this is key because the possibility, the most probable is that I will pay for a video game for how many people my friends have to pay, and it's more likely that I will pay if my friends are playing. So if my friend has Android, another one has iOS, and another one's on Facebook, if they can all be playing, then it is more probable that I will end up paying for it. Well, if your friends see that you're playing something, and we love that the Facebook war would win, and that's key, isn't it? Yes. If your friends talk about water, you will end up paying €10 for a bottle of water if everyone talks well of it. So social things are very important for us. More prominence, the better. For us also, is that the order for you? Web, then Android and iOS. Well, we don't yet have any solid experience in web to be able to publish like King does on the web. So we follow the classical rule of iOS, then Android, and then the rest of the shops, whether it is Amazon or Kakao or any type of shop or integration. Before you talked about Unity. Perhaps King doesn't do this because they do everything themselves, but this sounds familiar to me because in commercial console games, I think I know a bit about that. But for our audience, why is Unity important, or why could it be a revolution in applications development? For us, not for King, that is not the case, but for us, this has been our revolution, our own particular revolution. It was when we began to do video games with Unity. We began before with Cocodos Day and other technologies, but there was for Android you had to do it for Zero. There were solutions that did the Android porting, but it wasn't total. There was always a problem. And with Unity, we managed to have a pretty good engine at a cheap price. It's not like Real or others, which are very powerful engines. It's for a mobile, and for us, it enabled us to quickly develop an application on all the platforms. And also, Unity has a point which, for me, I love personally, and they've managed to get a tool which covers both worlds, the developers, and there's always a confrontation. And with Unity, it is the common point, and the two have to work together, the designers, the developers. So you do a multi-platform single development, and it brings two worlds together, which is design and development. The two worlds are brought together because design can do a bit of development and development can also do a little bit of design. So that brings them together in a unique way. Well, Unity reminds me of the Criterion at the time. They did the same, but for consoles. Criterion, what they did, any company is looking for a way out. And Unity has two ways out. The traditional one for a technology company, which would be acquired by a large company in order to stop smaller companies from progressing. This is what happened with Criterion. It was acquired by Electronic Arts, and the problem is if you go out public with a technology company, your business model does not give you a performance, or it's very difficult to maintain a third-party technology company and make it public. But apart from this, you do everything. All the teams, all the equipments are sufficiently big enough. You have your own engines. Well, if we depended on Unity, and Unity tomorrow says that any Unity game has to pay 10% royalties, for example, if Unity becomes public, then they will have to find business models because of the pressure of getting alternative revenues in order to improve profitability, and the probability is that they would have revenue shares, and that would be a risk for King to have to be working with a company that would then could take away as part of your revenue. So if it was it came out on the stock exchange, well, we can do it for prototyping. Well, if you kept 10%, for example, of the 790 million, which King has invoiced just in the first 6 months of 2014, it would be a good bite at the apple. Well, this is what I wanted to see. I wanted to see the situation of this country in terms of technological development. What is your opinion about the position of Spain in the development of video games for mobile devices compared to Europe or compared to the world? Well, I think we're at a crossroads because of the traditional world of consoles, which was dominated by UK companies and US companies, and that is at a very mature stage, and it's beginning to shrink a little bit in volume, and with the mobile video games, it is growing more than 20% annually. And in Spain, we are strong in that particular sector. There are some important companies in Spain in this sector. If we look around Europe, the most important companies have a representation in Spain. That is a very positive thing. This has never happened before. In consoles, we'd always been lagging behind, and we were much more of a center for contributing technology, but not for creative development or strong creative development. There were the occasional examples, but not at the scale that exists now. Now, I think that this is a sweet moment for us, and now in Europe and in Spain and even in the United States, they begin to get to know Spanish developers, and we even have quite important applications. But from the point of view of institutions and university and so forth, I think that they should update a bit. They should see that we've always wanted to play when we were young. We've had our consoles, and there's a big tradition in games among game players in Spain, and they should encourage it more. There's lots of master courses and many courses, but this should grow more, particularly at universities. For example, I finished university about 7 or 8 years ago, and I studied a lot of subjects that really weren't of much use or any use. Well, I don't know about you. When I was scaling Microsoft, I went to universities in order to get the level of master's courses was more appropriate, and that's why I cooperated with the digital university was in Barcelona. So you directly had to approach the universities. Yes, we could do a lot more in terms of subsidies, and there are. It's not to set up a company is not easy. Also, bringing in talent from abroad is also difficult. So I think there are many things that could be improved tremendously. No question about what advice you would give to the the administration, because there's a lot to improve. Yes, there's something for me. It's something that's important, and that's in the English language. That's for society. I think that it's not easy to do. I think there should be fewer broadcasts in Spain in Spanish, because the information is all in English. Everything's done in English, and sometimes you see people with a lot of talent who have a great deal of difficulty, and that would give us that little extra competitive edge, and their educational assets with regards to subsidies or support is more difficult, because it is a difficult area and it is much more complex. But I would say for education, to get people ready and train them, but also on television to have more business training. As a society, I think we're not a society where we have a tradition or know-how about business, about how to operate a business and how to manage it well, what not to do. It's not something they talk about very much, and to have more information about this. Perhaps this sounds normal, but I think people here might be struck that in a time of recession or crisis, now you are saying that we are in the sweetest moment, and therefore it is a sector which should be backed, it should be supported if you want to ensure a good future. And there's a lot that can still be done. You were talking about the English language. 2014 was still struggling with that, and yes, it is still a scourge in our country. Well, I agree with you, really, that many meetings do not progress because somebody is not understanding, and they leave the meeting nodding and saying yes, but really they haven't properly understood what they are being asked to do. I think English also, I imagine, is important also to open up new markets. What international markets? For example, for King, which is expanding more, what markets are left for you to get into, and why haven't you done it yet? Because they're more difficult. Well, King's growth, where we have the greatest potential to grow, is Asia, and Asia would be particularly Japan, Korea, and China. These are very difficult markets because the way of working there is different. We offer services. You connect and you play. It's not a finite product. You play it and you finish, and then that's it. But we constantly bring out concepts, and that has different levels. And these levels are brought out approximately every 2 weeks, so the new content that people can continue connecting to the service. And in Asia, it's very different. It's much more advanced concept of service, and they have updates and very constant social events almost every day. There is an event where you can participate and go to. They're different every day. So, for example, if it's a Candy Crush, for example, you have a special level where you can get a specific power up on that day if you manage to get many people to play. So you play that day, or somebody will tell you that yesterday something happened that you can't do anymore. Well, measuring at a cultural level in Europe, to what extent people will like or not the fact that the application has a lot more movement, because sometimes people who are more relaxed say no, I don't want to be looking at my application all day. But in Asia, people do dedicate a lot of time to the mobiles. It's very important that in China, people are leaving aside televisions and computers for mobiles, and so the usage is very different. This indicates what I was saying, that it's going to grow more and more. Well, I think that this is important, what you just said, this cultural difference in how to use the same game. If in China the market is, if it doesn't work, the same metrics, and you're trying to see whether here that does work and can be implemented. But this could be important because it could generate more volume business for you. Yes, it's important. There are cases, for example, Clash of Giants, I think it is. It's a Finnish game by design. There are fights. This is content. These are content generated by these, and this meant that there were much more dynamic updates. And they saw that this worked in Asia, and they began to create activities, group activities. But I don't know exactly what they preferred in Asia. But it worked quite well, and they got into the top 10. They didn't get to number 1 in Asia, because to do that you have to offer what they want exactly in a more specific way. So the pattern is different. But apart from what Manel is saying, in the West, it's always been harder for having games, and Microsoft has difficulty selling in Asia, and also because of the aesthetics. They say they like a different visual aesthetics and with their own social works, and Facebook there doesn't work, and as you have to be with Kakao online and others, and you have to work with them in order to get a relative success and to begin to get some kind of success. But it is quite complicated. South Korea and Japan, well, you've just mentioned Line. There was an item of news recently which Line was associated with WeChat, and they've invested I don't know how many millions of dollars in host companies in order to develop games with their chat systems by tying them together. So any day they could tell you that you have to have WhatsApp in your games. I don't know. Well, we have the King platform, which is also to communicate and to create a set of users, and little by little we're bringing out the different games because people like to communicate, and that's what we're looking at, to adapt it to all the different cultures. In Asia, it works in a certain way, and also a very important thing is that in Asia they don't want people to know who they are. People don't want to connect up to Facebook. People don't want to do it through Facebook. They want to maintain their privacy. They don't want their friends to know that they're playing. They don't want their friends to know that they're dedicating time to play. They like to play a lot, but they hide it. And so these are nuances that are very important indeed when you go to Asia, and you have to remember them. In this sea, well, more than a sea, it's an ocean of applications and mobile games. There are mobile games for everything. Fish have their games. You can chase Pujol, Catalan politicians through Andorra, or Pablo Iglesias, not a politician, and there's a game for everything. So how can you stand out in this ocean? What makes the difference? What makes yours different? Well, partly is the novelty. If you're something new, in these cases, those examples are just one or 2 day applications. But even Belén Esteban, a Spanish TV personality, also these are applications that last just for a short time, and in an afternoon, a group of friends do it. But for the long term, really, to stand out, you also need to have something new, but with a new system. You cannot compete with the Cloud Clan, and then you're fighting against a lot there, and so you have to find something new. You have to have a nice looking icon. The name should also be attractive. The names on the applications are sometimes eternal and too long, and that isn't going to get anywhere. So you should always try to be up with the latest things. Is there a rule? Well, obviously, if you have done money, I know that Google, Facebook, and all the advertising platforms are fighting, because what they say is installations. And now you can click on an advertisement and you go directly to Apple Store or App Store or Play, and that is the war where to get to the top and to have a very good game to be in the top 10. People looking for something that has a turnover of $500,000 per day. Yes. Well, for me, I think that, but this is subjective, really. But for me, the value chain in video games is first of all the platform. If you develop a Candy Crush, but you develop it instead of for iOS or Android, and then afterwards for Facebook, if you develop it for a platform like PlayStation 3, it wouldn't have had the success that it did have. So the development of the platform is the first thing. If you forget that or you don't do that well, the business won't work properly. And the second critical item is the product. After Candy Crush, and then there's more and more competition, to have another Clash of Clans now that one exists is not the best idea in the world. And to identify the product that is going to work best, the best way is to do a historical analysis, the same as the movies, that particular styles come back, and then you see where there's niche. And the second part, that if that doesn't work, you won't get anywhere, is the business model. There wasn't micropowers, so you couldn't implement that business model on iOS, and then you have how you do it. That's key, because if there's no quality, then the marketing doesn't scale up, and that's very important. If you do a video game that is very good, the best thing that there can be, for every euro that you put in, just to give you an example, for every euro that you invest, you will get 30 as a profit or benefit in number of people. This is conceptual, but if the game is bad, you will put in €1. Let's say it's normal or a bit weak, then as much the maximum is you'll get 1. So it's not profitable. So the marketing scale, if you have the same budget, 100 million, it's not the same to invest that in a very good game or in a bad game, because with one you'll have a return of 30, and with the other one just 1 if you manage to get there. And what is very important, as we said, we do service. We see this as a product as a service, and so the maintenance is very important. That requires a methodology of data analysis to gather data to see how to optimize the product after launching it, and that's very important also. And now, since we're here and nobody's listening to us, well, is that what meant that Candy Crush, in spite of this, of the fact that it is clearly based on previous games like Try True, Cookie Candyland?
So you take something that already existed. We all have played with MSN Emerald, and you take that and you get it into the correct platform with the correct monetization, correct game, correct platform, business model, which is relatively innovative at that point in time. All that is also part of the business model, covering the viral parts. Then the implementation, it has to work, easy to download, quick to download, stable. You don't need a Wi-Fi connection to download it. It's quick to start. It has good nuances. That's in the part of entertainment, and you have a good product with the correct model. With marketing, you scale it up, and when it gets big, in Candy Crush, for example, we have been able to keep that stable by analyzing what the users wanted to have in order to keep that level. Yes, but there is one ingredient. How can you make that when someone closes their eyes, they can dream about Candy Crush? Well, in order to do that, the game has to be very good, but many other people have to play it. Their friends, that's the motivation. You want to be better than them. You want to beat them. Yeah, you are talking about testing the users. Is there a way before launching a game? Do you have a way to, for example, say, let's launch this improvement, this enhancement of this new game? Do you use friends of yours or to know whether you can launch it? Yeah, even among ourselves, with our friends, we even go to schools to test the applications with children. But in the end, if I test my own application, I'm going to push where I wanted to push, and I don't have that real feeling that I'm playing. And so in order to do that, we use platforms. We use a lot of analytics, third-party analytics, not proprietary systems, and we try to measure everything. We have a platform where you can see people playing directly in your application. They can follow a pattern, a pattern that they follow during the they can go to specific sections within the application, and you see the person speaking, and the voice is recorded, and you can see their emotions, how they get more or less emotional, or whether they get bored, and that's very useful, and that gives you a score at the end. So do you have to analyze video by video, or do you have these user testing platforms, or do they give you a set of data and they say at this point in time they get bored, or they love this part? No, they give you the videos. And they can even give you the comments that they make, a score that each user has to state, and they give you a lot of information. What age ranges do you use? Whatever you want. You can ask for children to test your application. You work a lot with children, don't you? Yes, we do. You can see how children test your games. Yes, you receive a direct feedback. In the App Store, for example, you upload an application and you have a negative review and I don't like it. And you can ask, what is it that you don't like? You cannot answer to those people. So you miss something there. That's what analytics measure very well. And so with this platform, rctv.com, if it's a new feature, perhaps you haven't, if it's a new feature, you can directly test that in that platform. And in terms of data collection from King, are you using this big data, and that every action performed by the user, which seems to have no effect, you can see this person has gotten here, but then he didn't take this other step that I was expecting. Yes, we try to review the content to see what content is gains more acceptance, to try to adapt your offer. We want to retain people as much as possible. We want to have as much people as possible playing, and of course that they share it, that they pay for it. That's what we measure to define an application. We also use user testing, mainly for women, 50, 55-year-old women, American ones. Yeah, why that? Because they are quite tough. If they don't like something, you can be working 1 week on something, and they look at it and they say, this is rubbish, this is useless. So you have a headline there, the 50 or 55-year-old ladies in America are tougher than anyone. Yes, they are very straightforward, and they say, this, I like this, I don't like this. And someone told me, if you talk to the people at King, ask them, does it have an end, Candy Crush? Is it going to be over at some point in time? No, this is a service. You will, if you want Candy Crush, you will always have Candy Crush. As long as you want it, it will be there. There are people who always play the same level, and that's quite funny. And we see people, I think that there are patterns that people like, and it's like a solitaire. And they play once and again. Yeah, perhaps this is very revealing. Do you know where people play? No, we have information about the levels that the people play. No, I'm talking about the places, at work, at home, what room in the home. No, we don't have that kind of information, I'm sorry. Ale, you are working hand in hand with Disney due to the experience that you had with the first company. We started with Disney Publishing, which is the story and telling and tales for children and so on. And then we started to work with another section which was devoted to games. Yeah, your star title is Frozen, but you have your own intellectual property, don't you? Which is Head Soccer and My New Baby, which is some kind of Tamagotchi for mothers and babies. Yeah, we have version number 2 right now. It's much better. We always try to strike a balance between the third party and the proprietary. We have games with Disney, with CBS, with DreamWorks, Enbro, with many intellectual property brands, but we always try, from the point of view of the group, from the human perspective, it's always better to develop your own application. You make all decisions in all stages of development if it's a proprietary product. We also have a Colomania, which is one of our most successful applications, and we right now have 70%, 30% between third party and proprietary. And from that 30 that you keep for yourself, what are you doing with that? Do those 70%, those third-party products, allow you to execute or to turn into a reality your own dreams? Or yeah, with a third-party product, you learn about the technology, you get the know-how of the store, you get a lot of knowledge, you train people who were not trained, your employees, and then with iterations and learning a lot with the development for third parties, we can use that and we can translate that to our own processes, our proprietary processes, and get the know-how there. Some people talk about the fact that the games many people play a game 1 year and next year there's a huge decrease, and nobody remembers about that game. we have Melvin Morris. He left the company on the 25th of November. It's difficult to keep up there in the top 10. That's always very difficult to have a stable return. But of course, there are many circumstances. We did a forecast when we went public, and then it decreased at 28% that you were talking about. But we were much better in the console. But getting to the top one, to the top first, we are very well known for Candy Crush, but we have had 4 platforms: Rescue Saga, Candy Crush, Panflio, and Bubble Witch. And we have titles that are getting to the top 10 in all platforms, and that's something nobody has done, and there was never such a case in video gaming. We didn't have a single success. We have had other successes, but of course the magnitude of Candy Crush is huge, and that's something you cannot foresee. But it's also true that 50% of the profit of the company don't come from Candy Crush. I think that in the last 12 months, we have gone from 80% or 85% 15 to 50-50 in our profits. That tells a lot about our capacity to replicate success. I would say that it is not true that you cannot replicate success in a video gaming company, and I can also tell you that if you use a scale properly, it becomes easier to replicate a success, because you know what got you there, and then you have better resources to get there again in the future. Okay, free to play. We used to purchase a game some time ago, and now everything has changed. A child has spent $2,000 playing a game, and the commission, the authorities in this had forced the industry to give back $32 million because people were spending money that they were not allowed to spend. And so the word, that's why Apple has changed the free-to-play to download something, and they have changed for free or gratis or something like that. And now you can it's get. In English it's get, in Spanish it's obtener, to obtain. Did you notice with this recent change that there is a decrease in the number of people don't see gratis or free of charge, and they stopped downloading? No, we didn't see any changes. When there was that change, that they asked for the password, we saw a decrease in profits in revenue. But if you look at the best revenue applications which categorize companies for their according to their revenue, you see that there hasn't been any changes. And of course we have to continue with the free to play, and it cannot become a pay to win. It means that if you don't pay, you will never win. Now we have to be very careful, but we are still betting on free to play. Is the iOS or the Apple user the one that spends the most vis-a-vis the Android one? No, that's relatively subjective. If we talk about the total number of devices all over the world, yes, it would be the case. But if you compare the niche of the last Android or the most advanced Samsung, no, it depends on the segment. Of course, iPhone has a higher price, and that's why people has a higher purchasing power, but of course they tend to spend more. But if you segment Android, or if you take the premium range of Android, they spend more or even or the same as Apple consumers. And what percentage of players pay? And how many play for free? Well, it depends. If you look only at those who are playing who start playing, there are many people who leave. But if you look at the more premium players, they pay. If you have more than 140 million people playing every day, if everyone paid $1, we would be making a lot of money. But from then on, you can of course contemplate some kind or consider the possibility of having people living without paying. But what, 4% or 5% of people are paying? No, if you go to the big players, it's 20%. But if you look at a daily ratio, but how much they pay in 1 year, in 1 day, in 1 week, it depends, of course. Can you sell games outside of the free-to-play? Can you, the traditional formula of pay €5 and purchase this game and I'm not going to ask you for more money, does that work or is it completely out of date? No, I think it still works, and I think that it is even coming back. The premium games, Monument Valley, for example, it's a beautiful one, a beautiful game, and it's worth $2.99, I think. And Freddy's Night, which was recently launched, we have the second edition for iOS, and it's around 15 in terms of revenue. So it is still accepted, that pattern. People have gotten fed up with free-to-play, and they are now changing the trend. Yeah, for me it's very clear. In order to understand all this, we have to understand the business model. A business model of prepaid product is very useful in a monopoly kind of market. When we had the consoles, with the publishers, they had a set of slots. They had a pre-agreed set of slots, and you said, you are going to give me this year, you are going to give me the same ones. There was very little innovation because they were promoting very specific products where they knew how much they would get. When I was working with Mr. Montes, who was in charge of Sony for Europe, I asked, why are you not creating a greater degree of variety? And he said, you have to cover these slots, you have to make the most revenue as possible, you market those which work well, and there was a case when he wanted to promote an innovative game and it wasn't covered, and they said, no, we are not going to pay for that because we want to spend our budgets in the products that we know are going to work, and so they don't want to innovate. So in order to have a free-to-play model, it's much more difficult to run a business free-to-play vis-a-vis premium. In consoles, there was no free-to-play, but they could do it, but you have to offer more quality. If you purchase a console game and you have spent €60, those €60 are in the hands of the company already, and you are not going, and you are going to make an effort to have a good experience there. But if you could have that for free, you are not going to pay it. The average of payment per month is $20, which is much lower than the average in a console product. Those are two different models. More in closed markets, premium has a bigger share. When it comes to volume, free-to-play is always going to be better. I, as a user, not as a professional, I prefer the freemium model, and it was very inconvenient for me as a manager. Why? Because it requires a greater degree of quality in the games, otherwise I don't get paid. And so there are two different models for different needs, and when it comes to a scale, the predominant one is going to be the freemium one, because for an essential reason, because the markets are not controlled by a publisher. Anyone can publish. You are not going to go to Apple to beg for them to launch your game. They will do it unless it does not comply with their requirements. And so that democratization to reach all users and that globalization creates freemium. Yes, and creates freemium and creates innovation. Yes, that creativity was not present in consoles. If we look at the console market, the type of product, the biggest innovations were the Sims. There were very few innovations in the last 10 years. They closed the business of innovation. They closed the business to innovation because they wanted to have a monopoly. The consumer didn't have any power. So the user that has played freemium a lot is reluctant to get into another console world. The people who got out of World of Warcraft, they didn't want to get into another of those messy situations. And so you are detecting that, and you say that one of the most important pillars is going to be the freemium. No, there's always going to be variety, but You get tired of a certain model, but of course, if when it comes to pay for the user, it's always freemium, the best possibility. Yeah, I think you are right. Last year, there was 90% of the revenue of the App Store were for freemium. And so I think we are not going to have a 50-50 situation, but the users are learning that if they want the direct experience, there are freemium games which are very useful, and Apple is also promoting those even more than the normal games. Just to conclude and to open up a Q&A session, because some people will want to take advantage of your presence here. I like to see that Nintendo is now ready to open up the Pokemon license to mobiles more beyond their own platforms. Gameloft, these consoles, have they arrived in a timely fashion at the mobile market, because they are trying to displace you from that market? It's an inconvenient reality. The same happened with the internet and the mobile operators. Whenever there is a change, a significant change that changes not only the operations of the company but also your invoicing focus, you get into conflict, into more mature, you become a mature company, and things become difficult. If you have always done something, you are in charge of the new traffic section of telephone, and I'm in charge of calls. I don't want you to take share from the profits from me, and so of course there's a whole operational structure that I will have to change, and it's slow, but there is a point in time at which the companies face this and make a decision, of course, because they want to get to be where the profit is. And the bigger the company, the more difficult it is to adapt, in spite of having FIFA or SIM, where the intellectual property plays a very important role. I don't know if anyone wants to ask any question to Ale or Manel. Yeah. Hi. To anyone. Don't you mind to tell your name and the name of the company? I'm Nacho Monter from Caso Arena, a very small video gaming company. Two questions. Is it interesting to develop for mobile devices like Windows Phone or BlackBerry vis-a-vis iOS or Android? If not, does Unity do it with one click? In case we develop in Unity, the focus is very important. For example, if you are small, you can try to support more devices to have a competitive advantage. Someone that promotes you more than the other platforms. But for a bigger company, it can be beneficial. But I mean, I wouldn't say that is a priority when in terms of turnover. But for Unity, for example, Unity entails a set of strategic risks for a company such as King. That's why we are not using Unity. Our experience with Unity, they always say that the porting is with just one click, and that's not the case. But it's very easy, and they have an extension for BlackBerry and for Windows Mobile and for many other platforms. And so if you they have a student license which is quite cheap, and if you are interested in that platform and you want to become multi-platform and you want to encompass several, I think that the best option is Unity. Any other questions? I think we have a couple there.
Hola, me llamo Ingrid.
Hi, my name is Ingrid. I work for Disney. We work with you. Hi, Ale. My question is for Manel. And I wanted to ask, because it was surprising for me when you launched Bubble Witch Saga 2, the whole investment in traditional media and the results haven't been, according to the data that I have, in the life of this app, the results haven't been as good as the investment that you have made in traditional media. It's surprising that such a techie company as yours has gone to the conventional media in order to obtain results that are not up to what it should be. The results are not so bad. No, of course, we would love to have those data for other applications, but compared to some of your other applications where you haven't invested so much in traditional media, it has been more the buzz, the noise that has been generated. My question is, what was the aim of that traditional campaign? Two things. First of all, Bubble Witch is the third biggest title for King, and so it's a huge turnover, very important revenue. We are not talking about a small product. I'm not going to give you details, but it has a huge turnover. In terms of marketing, secondly, the reason why we are using traditional media is because the cost of acquisition in digital systems, what would be performance marketing, has increased so much that it is worthwhile to use that money for other conventional media, because traditional marketing is working quite well, and because of the cost of acquisition of those methods is becoming lower, and we never spend €1 in marketing if it doesn't return €1 at least. And the users that came directly through that marketing always gave us back at least €1 for every euro that we invested. There is another question, I think. Hi, my name is Javier from Uricera. We are an outsourcer, and we work for companies that want to do mobile games, but they don't have capacity in-house to do it. We see a gold fever in the last few years. There's a lot of new capital, many new companies, democratization through tools such as units. Do you think that there can be a correction in the market more than from the side of the demand from the offer side? There's a certain degree of concentration due to the working method of the stores, the barrier that games have, because you need a certain amount of money to keep up that marketing. And those companies, some companies with a huge amount of money are not being able to get into the market. Is there going to be a correction, or do you think that it is going to continue growing? And is that going to be for everyone or not? I think that it will continue to increase, to grow. But I agree with you in the sense that the cost of acquisition of the user has increased so much that a small company cannot acquire users. And so they cannot acquire visibility, and that's a vicious circle. And so if they don't have visibility, they don't have downloads, but there's always room. If you look at the top 10 of free applications, there are always independent games. I'm playing now with one of a car game, and there is always room. There is always a position that you can occupy, either through web or through arcade or whatever. There are applications which recommend games, and you always have room, but the traditional pathway, the traditional channel to market an application is complex for a medium-sized company, because the prices are increasing, and now with Christmas, the Christmas season, the prices continue to increase, and it becomes absurd at some point in time. Yeah, I agree. The important topic here is that as long as the platforms are not closing the possibility to, if you wanted to launch a game in one of their stores, if you want to publish your product, as long as they don't close that possibility for you, there's going to be changes and there's going to be possibilities for the independent companies. The opportunity is always there. I'm sorry, the speaker is not using the microphone. The offer is huge. The people are finding more and more difficult to have a return on investment, but it depends on how you do things. In King, we have an EBITDA of 40%, and so the return is very high vis-a-vis the investments. Is it possible to do that? Yes, but the most difficult part in order to achieve those levels of revenue, that in our case it's one of the key elements, the platform, the product, of course, the business model, good execution, but when you get there, you get to the marketing part, to the commercialization, and that has to be fed with data, with very agile systems to know what is your return per install. You have to know as soon as possible how much that user is going to give you back for every person that installs your application. We have been investing in this system for a long time, and we have a mathematical model which is like investing in the stock exchange. And right now there are no open platforms free of charge that offer this kind of information, and creating it from scratch, it takes a lot of effort. But of course there will be platforms that make access easier for all kinds of people and of companies. I wouldn't like to finish this session without recommending to download my new baby 2 to test Candy Crush Soda Saga with a new taste, an exciting taste, to visit MeriStation.com. And I would also like to thank both speakers for their presence here and for their overview of the market. Thank you very much.